God, we thank you for that reading. It's certainly good to see everyone this Lord's Day. We're all present in sound body and mind to worship God in spirit and in truth. Welcome each and every one of you. We do have visitors. Thank you for coming. We invite you back at each and every opportunity that you have. To say a little bit more about Van, what the next Lord's Day, Friends and Family Day, and the flyers that are out there, let's make a special effort to invite friends and invite family. It doesn't take too much. 1 out of 10 people will come. So you got to invite at least 10 folks. Let's do that. Let's make an effort to do that. And reminded also that the day is for that the day will be a little different. We'll have the services. We'll have dinner together after that. And then immediately following that, we're going to have a sing. That is the day. And we're also going to have a song leader or two that will be our guest and leading that song service. So we look forward to that day. So let's invite those that are our friends and that are our family. As has been mentioned in the bulletin as well as in Jackie's prayer, today is Mother's Day, and it is traditionally recognized as a national holiday. And of course, as with all national holidays in this country, what this country has done to Mother's Day is turn it into a sale. You go in the stores in the last 2 or 3 weeks, and this is what Mom wants. And this is a gift idea for Mom for Mother's Day. You need to buy this for Mom. And there have been suggestions like that for the last 2 or 3 weeks. And, I think kids learn at an early age too how to do that on Mother's Day. Those little cards that they bring home from kindergarten and first grade and second grade. My guess is if there's some others here that have children that are 30 or 40 years old, they probably have those little cards that they brought home and they've kept all those years, and that means something to them, but about what their children thought of them as their mothers. Let's ask a real question this morning, though. I want to know, what does your mother really want? What does your mother really want today? Now, as a guy, I tell you what, I've never been worth a nickel picking out gifts for my mom or my wife. I'm a loser when it comes to that. I just don't score very often. I think I'm doing really good, but I miss that mark all the time. I missed all the sales. I missed all the hype. This morning, I want to tell you what your mother really wants for Mother's Day. I'm going to tell you, and when I'm done telling you, you're going to go, man, I wish I'd have talked to you last week or a couple weeks ago when my mind was blank, when I was trying to figure out what to do for my mother. This morning, I want to tell you what your mother wants for Mother's Day. But it's really not going to be me. It's going to be actually what Solomon says. A lot of our life's questions and answers come from, I believe, the book of Proverbs and the wisdom that Solomon has given us in the book of Proverbs. And it's actually Solomon who's going to tell us this morning very clearly what our mothers want for Mother's Day. And whether or not your mother is still with you or not is irrelevant, because what Solomon says, and it's an eternal truth, that the gifts that you give your mother and that the gifts that your mother gives you are going to keep on giving. This morning I want us to look at some of the suggestions that every mother, I promise you, desires. And before we get to those gifts, I think we should qualify the kind of mother that would appreciate the things that Solomon advises and the thing that Solomon says to all the mothers, because the mother under consideration is different. I think sadly, and it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out, there are a lot of mothers out there who would not appreciate what I'm about to say. There are a lot of mothers who are raising their children, sadly, who have a lot different idea about what a child needs than the advice that Solomon gives. A very different idea about their expectations for their children. But Solomon tells us the kind of mother that would appreciate the things, the gifts that we're about to offer, and that he instructs. Solomon, I think, on the outset would be a mother that is interested in instilling in her child a spiritual foundation and spiritual things in the child. Now, not all mothers would agree with that. They don't really appreciate that, like I've said. But the book of Proverbs, I think, is written, a lot of it is written as a father writes to his sons. But there are several occasions, I think, in the book where Solomon broadens that out to both parents. Let's continue on where Colby left off. Look at verse 8. He says, "Hear, my son, your father's instructions. Do not forsake your mother's teaching. Indeed, they are graceful, or as graceful, as a wreath, he says, to your head and an ornament around your neck. As Solomon discusses the kind of mother that is under consideration, that would consider the things that he has said, he's saying we're talking about the woman that is not only concerned about the difference in what is right and what is wrong, but she is the woman that is also concerned, I think, about instilling it in her child. She's not left just the father to raise the child in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. It's not just his, but she has a very strong and integral part in raising the child also. That's what Solomon's telling us. These two verses shows that she desires to teach her children to build the lessons, the foundational lessons that's going to bring that child into adulthood, that brings that child into a respectful, good, strong, spiritual Christian. That's her concern. Now, let's add something to that. He goes on to say some things about that. Not only is she concerned about that, we have all kinds of folks that are concerned about right and wrong and going in their children, but Solomon also makes a vital point that the mother that he's talking about is going to give the time that's necessary to instill in their children. There's time, there's responsibility in giving the child that kind of time. Let's go clear over almost to the end. Proverbs 29. As we look down to verse 15, recognize that this verse is really written in the negative form, but to keep it how we're going, I want us to understand the lesson has a more positive influence in how we're discussing that. But let's look at verse 15. He says, the rod and reproof give wisdom, but a child who gets his own way brings shame upon his mother. Here we find the implication of the mother that does not appreciate what Solomon is writing in the book of Proverbs. Here we find a woman who has left their child to fend for themselves. You just leave your child to figure out this life by himself. You leave the child to figure out the ways of the Lord, whatever the Lord wants. You leave that up to figure out what kind of person that God wants the child to be. But on the positive side, the woman that is not in this context is the woman who is instructing her child, who is spending time with her child, who is building her child up in the ways of the Lord and in the ways of the righteous. She's not left her child alone. She's not left her child with somebody else to raise. She realizes her responsibility in instilling in the child right and wrong, and she realizes her responsibility in making sure that she gives the time that is necessary to instill right and wrong in the child. It's her responsibility. It's not somebody else's responsibility to do that. You know, I remember in school there was a lot of kids that had a lot more than I did in a lot of ways, materially and other ways. And I remember this one guy, and he was in 8th grade, great guy. And he seemingly had more than all of us put together, and in a material way as well as other ways. But you know, that guy failed the 8th grade. He failed the 8th grade. I could not understand why he failed the 8th grade until as time passed, I went into high school with him. And what had happened was, and his parents were great people. We knew them. They're great. They were Christians. And what would happen, though, at 3 o'clock, he would be home by himself until 9 o'clock. So there was a period of time there he was left alone to fend for himself. All right. Parents would come home late. They were really wrapped up in their business. But that's what happened to him. And really his parents just really never got into raising him, I guess, as you would look at it that way. But I asked the question, what happens when that happens to a child spiritually? When a mother is not there instructing her child in the way of righteousness, when she's not taking the time. Well, I think the answer is in verse 15. It's right there. He's not going to grow up with the foundation that he needs to serve God. But the godly mother, the one who is going to appreciate the things that she needs to instill, right or wrong, take the time, is the mother who's going to take the time. And it's also the mother who's going to actually appreciate what God has given her to do. Raise the child. She's going to appreciate that. That's a godly mother. So with all that being said, I think we can recognize the kind of mother that Solomon is addressing here in the book of Proverbs. And with all of that being said, I think one of the greatest gifts that you can give your mom is the gift of wisdom. You know, the book of Proverbs, of course, the main theme is the book. It is a book of wisdom. That's really the theme in it. But, you know, how to find wisdom, how to exercise wisdom, how to use wisdom in the decisions that we make every day in our life. Solomon says one of the greatest gifts a child can give his mother is the gift of wisdom. Now, I'll just say something on the outset. I think that many times we undervalue the wisdom of our children. I think we let them off the hook a lot. I just do. You know, something happens, a kid messes up, and we give them that blanket excuse. Maybe a child is something needs to be corrected, but you know what? Hey, he's just a kid. He's just a kid. You know what? She's just a teenager. And we say those things as if we have no expectations of the child doing what's right that's been raised right. And we just let them off the hook a lot of times. We sell short the wisdom that a lot of times, I believe, ought to be in the child. And I understand that kids are going to make mistakes. I understand that teenagers are going to make the wrong decisions. We all recognize and understand that. But when we look at the book of Proverbs, what we're saying, or what Solomon is saying, is that whatever state of life that you're in, wherever you're at, you need to recognize the wisdom of these words. You need to make applications as the decisions that we make, both young and old. That's what he wants us to realize. Consider a passage also, I think, that's similar to chapter 1. Let's go to chapter 6. Proverbs chapter 6. Let's look down at verse 20. Listen to what Solomon says to his son and how he kind of brings this in to what we're talking about this morning. Verse 20. My son, observe the commandment of your father. Do not forsake the teaching of your mother. Bind them continually on your heart. Tie them around your neck. When you walk about, they will guide you. When you sleep, they will watch over you. And when you are awake, they will talk to you, he says. You know, it's interesting how this is written. I think, and I look at that, Solomon says your parents, if they're godly, they're going to work awfully hard to instill these qualities in you. If you've got godly parents, I'll tell you, they're working hard to instill the qualities that we're talking about in you. They're going to protect you when you're awake. They're going to protect you. They're going to watch over you when you're asleep. But he goes on to say, they're going to talk to you all of their life. Now, I think all of us know what he's talking about when he says that. Do you ever still hear your parents talking? All of us do. I mean, all of our life. I don't think we're talking about something that needs psychological treatment here. We're talking about the idea, though, that you get in a situation, you get in a decision place where you're going to have to make a decision, and those principles here that's been laid down from your mom time after time after time. I better say time after time, a few more for myself. You hear that. You hear the principles that were laid down from your parents. And I would encourage all of us, no matter what age we are, don't ignore that. Don't ignore the voice of your parents. Don't forget that. Always remember that. We listen because Solomon says these are going to be a guide for us all of our lives. These decisions, and they're going to come out. These are the things that will keep us from destroying our lives, that will keep us from going in areas that we shouldn't go, and it will help us make the best decisions possible for us. That's his concern. I would go on to say that no matter where we are, we need to have an appreciation for our mother's instructions, our godly mother. You know, it's kind of interesting. If we look at the book of Proverbs, and one of the themes over and over, Solomon is telling his sons over and over. He speaks to his sons. But we're going to look at it from a mother's standpoint. Proverbs 31. And really that is exploring and recognizing a mother's wisdom in choosing the right spouse. So many times Solomon says to his sons, now you need to think about this. You need to think about the woman that you're going to marry. And you know what? Not just Solomon and his sons. It's a very keen interest to the mother who their son or daughter marries. Notice Proverbs 31. I know oftentimes this is talking about the virtuous woman, which it is, and that's what we recognize this chapter at. But here's a son who had a king. And so his mom was in a very unique position. And King Lemuel. And notice what he says in the first 3 verses. The words of King Lemuel, the oracle which his mother taught him. What, O my son, And what, O son of my womb? And what, O son of my vows? Do not give your strength to women, or your ways to which destroys kings. Mother of a king over a land. Still that motherly wisdom is coming through. You better be careful who you hang around with. You better be careful who's going to affect your life. You better watch what you're doing. And I read this and I thought of the Lord's parable in Luke when he's talking about the prodigal son. He spends his father's inheritance, he goes off, and the words used are riotous living. There's no description given, but I think we'd all be safe to say that as long as the money flowed, this guy had women around him that he should not have had around him. King Lemuel's mother says, son, you've got to be careful about that. You've got to make very wise decisions about who you're thinking about marrying or who you're going to marry. And I look at that, I would say that the words of this wise woman, that she says to her son, I think it speaks to us. I think that one of the greatest gifts that you can give your parents is a good in-law, a good son-in-law, a good daughter-in-law. That's one of the best things that you can give your parents, a child who is going to marry someone that is going to help your child go to heaven. What a gift that would be to your mom. What a gift. Isn't it a wonderful thought? You think about it. Here's a mother that has spent time and effort and her life raising that child to fear God and understand what righteousness is, lay the foundation of principle, and here, lo and behold, the child picks a spouse who is just as concerned about their soul as mom was. It's the greatest moment. That's all of this in action. You look at the end of the aisle, your son is right here. That woman back there that's going to walk up and marry him is the woman that loves him enough. She wants him to go to heaven. What a blessing that is. What a gift that is for your parents. And likewise, reverse that. That lady back there, that's your daughter coming up here to this man. This man loves her so much that the only thing she wants for him is that he goes to heaven. What a gift. What a gift. All that worry would be gone. So here's King Lemuel's mother. He gives her a very good thought that I think we can all use. And in honoring our mother, ultimately when we do that, yes, we honor mom. But we ultimately, through that, honor God. Do we not? There's a gift that's going to I guess, in that. That's going to see wisdom in action. Well, another gift I think Solomon tells us, the gift of respect. You know what? That doesn't go out of style. I think in 100 years, when a preacher gets up, I think the language is going to change. Your welcome is going to be no problem. Hey, thank you. No problem. No problem. I don't know. Did I sound old when I said that? Sounds disrespectful to me. Hey, thank you very much. No problem. You know, disrespectful. Language changes. But now, what sounds disrespectful to me, in 100 years, nobody will give it a second thought. But the idea of respect, I think, is an interesting word, because if you look at the root word of the word respect, it actually means regard. Respect means regard. We talk about respecting someone in a good way, in a very good way. Let's leave Proverbs for a minute. Let's go to Paul's writing, 1 Timothy chapter 5, where he's instructing the church on how to take care of widows that are in need. Now listen to what he says. The first line of defense here in this passage is the woman's family. They are the first ones who are supposed to take care of him or her, the widow. He says in verse 8, but if anyone does not provide for his relatives, especially for members of his household, he has denied his faith and he's worse than an unbeliever. The reason I bring this passage up is because the word provide there is the same word as respect. That's what that is. It's the same word as regard. Paul's saying here, if anyone does not regard or have regard for his relatives, he's an infidel. He's worse than an unbeliever. He's denied the faith. So Solomon tells us that one of the very best gifts that you can give your mom, respect, regard, appreciation for the one who has done what? Instilled these principles of righteousness in you. Give her that respect. We think about that in a lot of ways. Let's go back to Proverbs chapter 19. Now, and again, this is written from a negative standpoint, but I want to switch it around here, make it positive. Verse 26. He says, he who assaults his father and drives his mother away is a shameful and disgraceful son. You know, the idea of driving away or chasing away, I don't think that's literal there. We're not trying to run down your mother. It's the idea of, though, that you're living the kind of life that humiliates her. The idea that you're humiliating your mother. This kind of life that does not show any respect at all. Well, if we consider that, what Solomon is saying is, when you look at our mothers, what we're doing is we're living the kind of life that would actually alienate our mother from us. Humiliate, alienate her. That's our gift to our mother. That we're taking these principles and the foundations that she's given us. And as we're looking at that, instead of alienating her, instead of humiliating her, we are incorporating those things in our life. What a gift. What a gift that would be to someone that has worked so hard to instill these things in you that you actually incorporate them in your life and you're living them. What a gift that is to your mom. She spent all of that time. This is going to be true, I think, wherever we live again in our lives and whatever age we are in our life. You know, for those of you that are still living at home and are under your mother's care, and you are under the same roof as your mom, this is a time that is most needful to show that respect in the utmost way. You know, there are times, believe it or not, where you're going to disagree with your mother. There are times that your mother is going to say no, when you know that the answer is yes. When you're like, oh no, I don't get it, blah, blah, blah. And you're not going to fully understand why it's like it is. But it's during those times that you need to allow this respect and this regard to kick in. And say, I might not get it all. I might not understand why it's like it is. But I'll tell you what, I'm going to give regard to my mother. Why? Because I know what she's trying to do. If that's all that you understand, if you're a teenager, younger, if that's all that you understand, I don't get it. I don't get why it's like this. I don't get why the answer's this. If all you've got is, I'm going to give it to my mom because I know that through it all, I may not understand it, but she's doing the best she can. I'm going to give that for her. She's got the best interest for me. But it doesn't stop there. When you get out, it continues on. All of your life. Proverbs 23. Listen to what Solomon says about this lifelong approach of honoring your mother. Notice what he says. Verse 22. Listen to your father who begot you, and do not despise your mother when she is old. All of us need to move out. The worst nightmare for a mother is their 40-year-old son coming back home that's divorced and got kids strung all over the country. But all of us need to leave home. We've got to leave the nest. We've got to get out of there. But you know what? Something that does not mean when you leave that is that you disregard everything that you learned, that she instilled in you. I think sometimes the biggest temptation for us often is when we first leave home. When we leave that, when we leave our mother's care and all the things that she installed in us, guess what you get to do now? Because you're not under the roof, free at last, free at last. I get to do anything and everything I want, no longer under the big thumb. Solomon says no. Solomon says that is the worst thing that you can do. And as I think the years begin piling up, I think as time passes, we begin to respect those things that our mothers instilled in us over time. We recognize the respect that I think grows and grows with most people as the years go by. I could talk to anybody in here that's older, an older brother or sister in Christ. And I could ask them whose parents have long been since, have gone and have gone on to their reward. Do you value your mother? And I bet that most would say, now more than ever, do they value their mother and the things that were said. I think this is because the longer we live, the more that we can see in our life situations the value of what was instilled in us from an early age on. And the love and concern that was given for us early on. Let's add another gift. We talked about the gift of wisdom. We talked about the gift of respect. Maybe the third gift, I think, is one of the most unusual gifts, and it's a gift that your mother will probably not forget that you gave her, but that's the gift that you not let your eyeballs get picked out by ravens. Remember that one, won't you? You might not remember wisdom or respect, but your mom doesn't want your eyeballs to be picked out by ravens. Turn to Proverbs 30. And we're leaving the words of Solomon really here. We're going to talk with a fellow by the name of Agar. Agar has some words of wisdom about this. And he writes this unusual proverb. But listen to the graphic language that he uses in verse 17. The eye that mocks a father and scorns a mother, the ravens of the valley will pick it out. And the young eagles, he says, will eat it. Now that is traditional Old Testament language. And it's symbolic language. The idea is when God, many times with his people that dishonor him, what he's talking about is you're going to have a dishonorable death. What he's saying is you live in the city, he used the words like dogs. The dogs are going to eat you. And if you live in the country, the birds, they're going to devour you. But the idea is if you're headed in a wrong direction, you've made bad decisions, what's going to happen is that it's going to end very bad. That's what he's talking about. If you scorn your mother, it is a repudiation to all of that wisdom that she tried to instill in you. All that hard labor and work that she tried to get that in you, it's a repudiation to her. All of the respect that she tried to instill in you, all of the regard, if you scorn her, it's just the opposite. All of those principles that she tried to put in you that were from the Lord. It scorns her when you reject those things. And what Agar is simply telling us, that the fate of someone that does that, it's not good. Now, that just makes good sense, doesn't it? If someone is trying to teach you the right way, if someone is trying to teach you how to walk in the ways of the Lord, upright, righteous, have respect, make good decisions, and you say, forget that noise, I'm going to do something else, do you know what that means? You know what they're saying? The end's not going to be pretty. It's not going to be good. Solomon says some things about this same line of reasoning. Proverbs chapter 20. Notice what he says, and he uses visual language again. It's a very biblical idea. In verse 20, he says, he who curses his father and his mother, his lamp will go out in time of darkness. You want to curse your mom? You're going to be walking in darkness. There's no light in that. There's no light in cursing your mom. You don't have too much of a hope you're cursing your mom. That's what he's saying. You disregard the teaching of your mom, you know what? It's going to put you in darkness. Proverbs 28. Look at verse 24. He who robs his father and his mother and says it is not a transgression, it is the companion of a man, or he is a companion of a man who destroys. What is this? Eyes picked out by ravens, utter darkness. You're a companion of the one that destroys. It's pretty good language. This is language of somebody that's disregarded what their mother has taught, what the wisdom that's been given to them. What he's saying is, don't desert it. Don't quit. Listen to that wisdom that your mother has given you. You know, notoriously, mothers are more protective than dads. They're always concerned about their child's safety. A lot of times dad will say, hey, Dad, I learned at a quick age, early age, who to ask. Hey, Dad, you care? I don't care what you do. And of course, Mom, what? How can you let him do that? How did you do that? And in my own marriage, you know, make sure you got a helmet on. Make sure you got a seatbelt on. What do you mean you let him steer the truck for 10 miles? All of those things come to mind when I'm reminded of how much more a mother is concerned about the safety and the well-being of a child, physical safety. And really what they don't want you to be is reckless with your life. Don't text while you drive. Sometimes the best gift you can give your mom is if you just come home safely. But think about that in spiritual terms. The best thing that all of us can give our mothers is that we do not become spiritual reckless. We don't become that way. The best gift is a wise and respectful child can give his mother is to provide his mother with the idea that, you know what, listen, I don't need to go out and try all that junk. I don't need to get involved in all of that stuff because I respect what you told me. And I respect that you told me it was wrong. And I'm going to go with that. I don't need to go out there and do that as the prodigal son did. I don't need to go out there as all my friends did. I love you, Mom, and I'm going to do what you say. I believe what you say. Not put your life in a spiritual wreck, in a mess that could have been avoided if you would apply the spiritual principles and lay the foundation of what your mother told you. You know, a mother, though, must get to the point where she's not hovering over the child. She must get to that point. A mother must get to the point where when a child reaches adulthood, she has to say, I've done all I have. And I've done all I can do. And let the child go. And yet, she can realize that all of this teaching, that all of the principles that have been instilled by the effort that she made, by the time that she took, will always be in her child's mind all of the days of her life. She can take wellness in that, knowing that. She can take a degree of happiness in that. That, you know what? We're going to have a good ending here because of those things. Proverbs chapter 23, the last passage. Notice what he says. Proverbs 23, verse 25. He says, let your father and your mother be glad, and let her rejoice who gave birth to you. Isn't that a wonderful thought on Mother's Day? Your mom's happy. Your mom is happy with you as a child. But you know what? Not just on Mother's Day, but every single day of your life. Wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't that be a great gift to give your mom? That as you look at your mom, she would say, I am so thankful and grateful, and I'm happy for the way your life has turned out. Can you think of a better gift to give her? Didn't cost a thing. You didn't have to buy a thing. But you know, I think about that. You know, it doesn't mean that we're not going to make mistakes. It doesn't mean that we're not going to mess up. It doesn't mean that we're not going to mess up big time. But it means we're getting it right. And it means that we want to make it right. And it means that we want to serve the true and living God. But you know, much more than making your moms happy today, folks, we need to make our God in heaven happy. Moreover, our Father is watching us. Moreover, all of these things that were instilled in your mother to pass to you have been given to us by the wisdom of God. That's what he's saying. If it's pleasing to the Father in heaven who has instructed the mother in the ways to teach you. This morning, is the Father in heaven happy with you as a child of your mother? Are you content? Are you listening to the things that your mother has said over and over again? What do you hear? And really and truly, what kind of gift have you given your mother? Whether she be here now or has gone on to reward, what kind of gift did you get her? Jesus said, he that believes and is baptized shall be saved. He that believeth not shall be condemned to an eternal hell. What a great gift to give your mom this day. What a great gift to give God this day. To come in simple obedience to Jesus Christ by obedience to the gospel. If you're outside of Christ, you're lost. If you have obeyed the gospel, you've fallen away, you're unfaithful, give the gift that keeps on giving for all of us. Please come and repent of your sins and we'll pray with you. Please come. As together we stand and sing.